All right, I would like to introduce myself and our esteemed panel. And Matt's just muting himself because his little baby boy has given him the flu. And so he's a bit coughy. So he'll just keep muting himself. And happy first birthday to Kyson, Matt.
Thank you.
Gorgeous little boy.
Yeah.
All right. Let me introduce myself first, just because I know more about me. My name is Judith Richards. I'm the creator of the Richards Trauma Process, TRTP. TRTP resolves trauma-related issues, anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc. And I teach psychologists, psychiatrists, others. I have taught Keith and Matt TRTP, and we are here to talk about the connection between trauma and addiction. And it's a huge connection, but we'll go into that in a moment. I'd like to introduce Keith first. Keith came to our training. You came to Melbourne when I had a broken arm and broken leg, I remember.
That's right. And
I was teaching. It was an interesting time. A few years ago now. And Keith is a counsellor, and Keith specialises in addiction recovery. Is there anything you'd like to say more about yourself, Keith?
Well, I've been practicing as a counsellor for about 19 years, and a lot of the work that I've done has revolved around trauma, and it actually led into addiction and addiction recovery. So I didn't start out working in addiction. It's just something that came about as a result of the trauma work that I was doing. And that's really, I guess, what brings me here today, and how I met Matt a few years ago.
Yes. So let's now go to lovely Matt Nettleton. Matt has a very interesting tale to tell. Matt came and did the TRTP training a couple of years ago, I think now, Matt, was it?
Maybe 18 months, around that.
Yeah. And Matt was an addict. So he has very, very, very lived experience, which we'll be going into. Matt, I think, wins a record for going through rehab the most number of times and failing. So Matt went to rehab 17 times, is that correct?
Yeah, I attempted 17 times.
Attempted 17 times. And then after the final time, you were led to Keith.
Yeah. And
things changed then. And we'll go into that story more. But Matt does extraordinary work now, not just with addicts in recovery, but with their families. Are you still doing that work, Matt?
I do still run courses occasionally, family courses. I haven't
family courses. Okay, so Jane Dunn, take particular note. And Jane will get her opportunity to ask you a particular question, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Matt is working in Australia, but also working with a big rehab centre in the States, I understand, Matt, that's a trauma-centred rehab, trauma-first approach.
Yeah.
And Matt will be, in the fullness of time, opening a trauma-first rehab facility in Australia, and we cannot wait. So, Jan, very excited yet stunned that 3 sessions may resolve trauma quickly. I'm thrilled for you, Matt. Thumbs up. Yeah, thank you, Jan. Yes, so let us begin. Thank you, people who are attending this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing your time, investing your energy to learn more about trauma and its connection, its absolute fundamental connection with addiction, whether that be addiction to substance or behaviour being gambling, porn, etc., etc. So let's begin, Matt, with a little bit about your story. I know that you've told it 116 billion times, but in a nutshell, can we have just a synopsis of your extraordinary story?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. So
That's a good place to start.
yeah, so I was born into a, what society would deem a functional family. My dad had high levels of trauma, but we had money. They loved me. I wasn't abused by my parents or anything like that. But anytime I'd walk into a room and say, "Dad," he would jump and hit the ceiling. And being that little, I was soaking in all those things, all those beliefs that I'm not safe already at that
Okay,
age.
so what Matt's talking about, all those beliefs. Can I just make a comment there,
Yeah,
Matt? Just interrupt you for a second. So even before we're born, up until the time of about 7, 8 years old, we take on ideas of who we are, how the world works, and our place in it, and whether we are safe. And that is key. Am I safe? And so Matt's early experience of having a very traumatized dad and walking into the room as a tiny little person, Dad would freak out. Child would think, I'm not safe. So Matt took on the idea, I'm not safe. And this person who's supposed to protect me I'm just not safe. So carry on, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah. So what happened was I started to construct this identity. I just call it a deficiency story now, like a deficiency narrative that told me
That's really interesting. Can I just stop there? I'm going to be stopping you, Matt.
That's okay. Yeah.
It's what I do. I butt in.
Okay.
So you constructed this identity, as we all do as we grow up. We construct an identity. And what's an identity? It's just a few ideas thrown together, some of them based on our tiny little person's perception of what's going on. And we're 60 years old and still working on the 3-year-old's perception of the world. And some from an adult in authority who tells us, you'll never be any good. You shouldn't have ever been born. Whatever it is, you're stupid. So these ideas go in. And from those unconscious core beliefs that become our foundation, that also becomes our identity, that I'm no good, that I'm not enough, that the world's not safe, that I'm not safe. So that's what Matt's talking about here. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was from a very young age, I started to construct this identity, this deficiency story. And
I love that, the deficiency story.
Yeah, it's a good word for it.
I love that. I'm going to write that down.
Story of deficiency. And so I went to school and I already felt isolated within myself. I felt like I didn't belong here. I couldn't connect with people. I felt invisible, all those sort of beliefs, like not good enough. And I was pretty severely bullied through primary school. So that just sort of cemented those beliefs. They became more true to me. It was more reason to believe that they were true. And I say to people looking back, if I was taught how to really process feelings, instead of running from pain, because we're taught culturally to push down pain, that it's not okay. And so every time I'd feel a feeling, I would push it down. And so I just ended up accumulating this big ball of unprocessed pain. And, the bullying in itself was very traumatizing. And when I hit high school, I made a decision that I'm going to go hang around with the dangerous people, the people everyone's scared of, the ones going in and out of juvie, the ones smoking bongs in the back of the oval, smoking cigarettes, wagging school, all that sort of stuff. And I made this decision unconsciously. I made it unconsciously because if I was hanging around them, I wouldn't get bullied.
Because by association, the bullies would know they'd get beaten.
That's right. I'd be safe, with them.
What a very smart thing to do.
Yeah, but I didn't know I was doing it.
No, but doesn't that just good on your unconscious leading you in that direction?
Yeah. And then I felt safe around those people. And I look back and, everything I did throughout my life was in order to feel safe, in order to feel safe in the world, because I carried so much fear in my system.
Fear.
Fear.
That is the thing. I'm so terrified that I'm not safe. Yep.
Yeah. So I was always on red alert. Where's the danger? What's going on here? And these were all the thoughts that would run through my head, and they were just part of this deficiency story. And so what happened when I hit high school was I started to smoke marijuana. I started to smoke ice at age 12 or 13. Started using drugs before school, although right into it very, very young. By age 13, I was using something every day. And looking back, okay, so if we look at what the drugs gave me, okay, let's look at that first. So when I would smoke a cone, marijuana, or use whatever drug, what would it give me? It would give me a sense of connection. It would give me a sense of belonging. I would feel safe. I would feel at home. I would feel comfortable in my own skin. I would be able to be myself without that fear, that doubt, that big knot in the stomach saying, no, you can't be you. That would all be overridden with taking a drug. And if you ask any addict, they'll say the same thing. If you say, what does it give you? They'll say it takes away the pain, or it gives me the sense of connection, or I get to feel like I belong, or I get to be myself, all the things I just said. It's always the common factor. So if we look at what it gave me, so then what was I lacking without the drug? All those things. And all those things are what trauma does to us.
Absolutely. It disconnects us.
Yeah.
Makes us feel that we don't belong, that there's something wrong with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we're separate.
Yeah, that's it. We're separate. That's the core of it. And so, I kept using drugs because, why wouldn't I? Of course I'm going to use drugs.
Well, hello, of course.
Yeah. It's actually was the same thing to do at that time.
Yeah.
Instead of me just being alive in absolute agony and not using drugs because society deems them wrong. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And so I kept using drugs, but what was happening, I was experiencing more and more trauma and this whole body of unprocessed pain, which exists here, below from the neck down. It's not in the cognitive mind, so it's not.
Can we just say that again?
Yeah.
Could you say that again, Matt?
Yeah, so it exists here, below the neck.
It's not in the cognitive mind. Our pain does not dwell in our cognitive mind. And this is key to take away for anybody here. Our pain does not dwell in our cognitive mind. And this is why so many people who come to TRTP training, who have PhDs, etc., say, why are you here? They say, because cognitive behavioral therapy is very, very slow, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And because the pain is not here. The issue is not here in the cognitive mind. So just making that point. We have to deal with it somewhere else. We have to deal with it where it is in the body and in the unconscious. We'll go there further in a moment, but keep going, Matt. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. And so what was happening was I was just accumulating pain. And, every time I'd have an experience, and like I said, because I was never taught how to be with emotions, I was never taught how to be with pain, and I was taught to run from them. From everything about my culture says, run. You're not okay as you are.
And we have the language of it, negative emotions.
That's it.
Well, no emotion is negative. It just is.
Yeah, it's only negative when we label it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we resist it. But so what happened was, I would use drugs and my tolerance was getting bigger and I was experiencing a whole lot of trauma. And I don't need to go into detail about what they were, but they were very horrific. By age 18, I'd seen some horrific things.
Can I just say some of those things? Like some of your friends had died from overdoses.
Yeah. And I'd witnessed that. You
had witnessed that. Absolutely. People you loved and people who you were connected with, people your tribe.
Yeah. Well, look, I will go into detail. So I woke up one morning with this young girl I was seeing, using with, but seeing at the same time. I woke up with her wrapped around my leg.
She was basically your girlfriend, wasn't she?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And she wrapped around your legs and dead.
Yeah. So I woke up with that, and that was around age 20. Everything's a bit of a blur.
Of course it is.
And so before that, I woke up on my 18th birthday and one of my friends was overdosed dead on the couch. And I remember the first thought in my head was, I need a shot, because I was using heroin by this point. And my first thought was, I need to use, because the pain was instantly too much. And so my brain had associated heroin with relief from anything that went wrong.
Of course, this is too terrible. I need a shot.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't called the ambulance or it's my 18th birthday or anything like that. It was, I need a shot.
Yeah.
Right? That was the first thought that entered my head. So that reflex for reaching even if it was just started with a thought, for reaching for something anytime any sort of pain happened, because when anything would happen, it wouldn't just be this pain of that situation. It would be all the pain I was carrying would be triggered. Like,
Can I just interrupt you once again? Sorry, Matt.
it's okay.
But what the model is that the distress of life builds up like the pressure in a balloon. And it's that event and 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 that event. And the balloon becomes so overfull that it just pops out. And some people pop out into anxiety, some into depression, some into addiction, some into chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, cancer, whatever it's going to be. And so it's not just about one event. It's never, ever about one event. Even if it's a catastrophic event like the Black Saturday bushfires, it's not just about that event. It's about everything that happened before then and then blew out into Black Saturday bushfires. And with Matt, it's all the things that happened. And then this girl he was connected to, you know, and she's dead. And it just, I needed anything to try and reduce the pressure in that balloon. It's absolutely understandable.
That's it. And it would be, you know, not just, it would be something catastrophic like that, or I'd witness a horrific act of violence, you know.
And there were lots of those.
Friends, plenty of those. And or it could be just a little comment from mum, you know, that would trigger that same intense emotional reaction, and that would make me want to go use. So anything would be a reason to use, because I was in so much pain, but I didn't know it. If someone had told me back then I was in pain, I would have been like, you know.
Me? No. Pain? Hello? Have you seen my tats?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a tough guy.
Yeah.
I'm an alpha male. Hello? People are scared of me on the streets. Do you see who I hang out with? I'm at the upper end of fuck you, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. And I created that persona as well as another way to
protect yourself
of overcompensating for that deep sense of pain. You know, I created that so people would be scared of me, so they wouldn't bully me. And also, this pain was so unconscious. You know, it was so unconscious. I wasn't aware of it. You know, if someone had said I had trauma, I'd be like, no, I don't. You know, but I
would have said more than that, Matt.
Yeah, I would have, but you know.
Just saying.
Yeah. So as time went on, you know, like the drugs ended up stopping working. They stopped covering up the pain. So I was left with the pain that I was trying to escape, but I was trying to escape it unconsciously. And I ended up in so much agony, and I was going in and out of detox, in and out of rehab, in and out of prison. And it was just like a
so Matt went to prison for crimes related to getting money for drugs.
Yeah, or you know, stuff I'd done while intoxicated. And you know, so I ended up heavily addicted to Xanax.
That's a dreadful thing. It makes you angry.
It's terrible. I'm missing about 3 years of my life because I
can't remember.
I black out for 3 years.
Did you get really angry with it? Because people I know that have been
I did. Yeah,
addicted with it just makes you angry.
Yeah, and the withdrawals from that, I had 7 seizures in half an hour.
Did you just stop it?
My heart stopped. Yeah,
Did you just no? Okay, so for anybody on this call who has a client using Xanax, do not educate. Not educate them. Let me just start that again. Educate your clients, your patients, if they're on Xanax. You never ever just stop Xanax, because that person can die. They have seizures and they die. It is such a dangerous drug. It has to be reduced very gradually.
Yeah, and that's any benzodiazepine, Valium included, and also alcohol. You know, so by this stage, I was eating ridiculous amounts of benzos, so Xanax, Valium, Hypnodorm is what it was called then, but it's previously known as Rohypnol. All those drugs, drinking copious amounts and using ridiculous amounts of heroin all at once. And my favorite place to be was between unconscious and dead. So if I wasn't between unconscious and dead, I was in agony. I was in.
It's a wonder you've got any brain left, Matt.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
So between unconscious and dead was the only place that you could bear to exist.
Yes. Yeah. Basically. Not basically, that definitely.
Definitely.
How it was. Yeah.
Wow. And then you, on your final about your final attempt at rehab, and then after that someone suggested Keith. Is that what happened?
Yeah, well, I'd been attempted rehab 17 times, and I sort of had only 2 friends left. And while I was in
When
rehab,
you say 2 friends left, it's not just everyone had run off and had friends with somebody else. These were people who were still alive.
Yeah, well, like most of them had either died or gone to prison. A couple had moved on with their life, but I'd lost contact with them. But
mainly in prison or in prison on major charges.
Yeah. Well,
murder, etc.
Yeah,
or
well,
dead.
when I was in rehab, that's when I found out one of my last friends got sentenced to 21 years for murder for something he did on ice. And I knew him. I grew up with him. He was just a kid who grew up in commission flats. Very good-hearted kid. Had a whole lot of trauma.
And that was his life.
And ended up using ice and going on some sort of
killing somebody, and there he is in jail. Jeez, poor bastard.
Yeah.
And the others were dead.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of them died. And so at that point, I had nothing left to go back to. I didn't have my friends. It had all fizzled out. It had come to an end. And if I was to go back, I knew that I was just going to die. It was just going to be me and heroin. That was it. And so I sort of hit this point of surrender. And I'd never heard, addiction was a symptom of trauma or unprocessed pain or anything like that. When I look at it now, it seems so obvious. I'm in pain, so I reach for something because I want relief. So I look at addiction as the condition of humanity. Substance abuse is, say, just a stage 5.
Yeah.
We all have
just makes perfect sense. Like, I'm in pain and this will stop my pain. So obviously I will do that.
Yeah.
Because our whole being is bent on avoiding pain.
That's it. Yeah.
And can you say that again? That addiction's a symptom.
Yeah, addiction is a symptom of trauma or unprocessed pain in the body.
Say it once more, Matt, because it's really...
Addiction is a symptom of unprocessed pain or trauma. Same thing. I use those synonymously in the body. It's a symptom of that. And it seems
did anybody you did rehab so many times. Was that addressed? Was your trauma, was your pain, was your unprocessed pain addressed in rehab?
Look, I think in a couple rehabs they attempted to, but it was very cognitive, or medicate it, which is just the same thing as me using drugs, because what would happen is I would...
Because you medicated with drugs.
And I would, yeah, exactly. And I would then abuse it every time. So I knew I couldn't go down that route. But so I went to rehab, and then someone introduced me, a counsellor referred me to Keith, because I knew I had to deal with trauma, because if I didn't have drugs in my system, I was in full fight, flight, freeze, unbelievable panic, 24/7. It was like, I explained it to Mum like this. I said, if I don't have, enough heroin in me to kill an elephant, it's like I've walked in and found my whole family dead on the ground. It's just that, like that unbelievable terror and fear, that fight, flight, freeze up here the whole time, and I'd use the strongest painkiller known to man, like repetitively all through the day, just to keep that pain at bay. And so I went and saw Keith. And
how did you get on to Keith?
I got referred by a counsellor at the rehab. Yeah.
Good. Thank God for Keith's all I can say. And then what happened?
Yeah, well, the more I worked with Keith, because I wasn't ready for TRTP at this point. I'd been, since age 12, I'd been in a complete fog. I was so out of touch with reality. And so what I did
with basic life skills, I would think.
I couldn't wash a dish. I remember washing a dish was traumatizing. People in the transition house I was in would get so angry because I just couldn't wash a dish. I was so overwhelmed with the idea of just washing like my plate.
Wow.
Yeah, I was that dysfunctional.
Whoa. Yeah. And so then you find this extraordinary man, Keith Hulstaert. Yeah. And you weren't ready for TRTP. So Keith did a fair bit of work over how long before you got to TRTP?
Would have been about 6-7 months, maybe, Keith. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, I would have said probably 6 or 8 months, yes.
Yeah. So Keith, can I skip to you now? Can you tell us about what was going on in that 6 to 8 months?
Well, I just remember, I mean, the person you see there as Matt today is not the same person who came to see me the first time
No, he was a
he turned
nasty
up.
bastard, wasn't he?
He's pretty angry, and he was in the waiting room looking like, I've been here before, and this will be just another in and out the
Counselling
door. And
session and
so yes, he was pretty angry. He was very dark sort of demeanour. So I think when we're doing this work, we need to be able to see the person behind the drugs, because that's really
absolutely.
the signature of the drugs, not the person.
That's the mask.
So and my work has always been about resolving a distress, and distress is stored in the body by the limbic system. So we need methods that address that. Hypnosis addresses that. EMDR for psychologists addresses that. Meridian tapping in the form of EFT or some of the other forms of meridian tapping address that. So it's about resolving how we hold the trauma in the body. As Matt said earlier, it's in the body, it's not in the cognitive mind, it's actually in the emotional mind, and the emotional mind is the body. And
That's
so it's
interesting.
about
Can we
resolving
just talk
that.
about that for a second?
Well,
It's in the
if I
body.
say
What about the unconscious? Tell me about that.
well, in my model of the world, the
Yeah.
unconscious mind and the body are the same thing, or the
Okay.
emotional mind is the same thing. Because how do we know we have a problem? Because we feel it.
We
Where
feel
do
it.
we feel it? We feel it
Absolutely.
in the body.
I like that. Can I use that, Keith?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The more people it helps, the better. So, I explain this to clients, and I would have explained it to Matt at the time. The cause of the distress is what's held in the emotional mind, the body, the unconscious mind. They're all the same thing. And how do you know it's changed? Well, it feels different. So, so we have to get, when we're doing this sort of work, get people out of their head and into their body. Of course, that's not easy for someone in trauma, because that's painful.
Oh, no, you can't go there. You've got to block that at all costs.
And of course, when people go there, they feel out of control, and it catches them off guard too. So at least in a session with a practitioner that's doing this sort of work, we have some measure of control over that. And I would guess that over a period of time of working with Matt, he would have had more confidence with being in his body the more that we work together. Would that be fair to say, Matt?
Definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's then being confident in the room with someone, in being in their body and feeling the feelings that they're feeling, and knowing that you can do something about those distressing feelings that you feel. Then out of the session,
Can I just stop you there?
the client.
Can I
Yeah.
just stop you there and just go back, knowing that they'll be okay with the distressing feelings they're feeling? Is that what you said, or did I mishear that?
Yes. Well, in the session, they know that they'll be okay, that you can do something to resolve them.
Okay, so they'll feel the feeling, but they won't get overwhelmed with that feeling, because you have tools to deal with that feeling.
To bring that down.
To bring it down.
Or even eliminate it in many cases.
Okay, so feeling such a fear, for example, which can completely shut down the system.
Yes.
And you have a way to bring that down.
And it would be, in, say, working with Matt, fear was a very big one for Matt.
It always is, isn't it? Fear, because our unconscious job is to keep us safe, and that fear is to keep us safe. It's a survival mechanism that goes from, when I was talking to Bill Bennett about this today, gorgeous Bill Bennett, if you're watching this, that fear can go from being a friend to being a jailer.
Yeah, it absolutely traps
its job
us.
is to be a friend, but then it gets a bit carried away and a bit over triggered, and it becomes our jailer and our torturer. Yeah. Sorry, Keith, carry on.
That's okay. So we would work on the big fears first, and it took a very long time for Matt to run out of fears, and it would probably be true to say that he's not out of all the fears yet, and none of us are. There's always
So it's
something that
something.
we're fearful of.
Yeah.
But the fears that we were addressing were getting smaller and smaller as each session went past. But in my model of working with people with addiction, there's two sides to it. There's a trauma that pushes you to use. I mean, really what's happening is I feel this trauma, this distress, and I want to avoid it, and I want to feel something else instead. And of course, drugs are a way of getting rid of not feeling that and feeling this instead. And the whatever drug or behavior that you employ to get rid of what you don't want to feel rewires the brain, and it then gives you false alerts to use. A bit like Matt's example there, when he found his friend dead, the first thing he wants to do is use. So the brain had rewired to say, well, normally when I feel fear, use, but here it said, I'm going to feel fear, let's use, even though I may not be feeling it right now. There'd be a whole lot of other things I'm sure Matt was feeling at that time. So the brain gets rewired, and I think this is how, the way that I work is that addiction is firstly a behavior. So when we're looking at trauma, resolving trauma, our behavior is, I don't want to feel this, I want to feel this instead. So the behavior is, let's escape from not feeling that and do whatever I have to do to feel this something else. So that's the first part of it. But then when people start using or change their behavior, and it doesn't matter whether you're a gym junkie, an alcoholic, or heroin addict, it doesn't matter. These are all escapes. And when you employ those things, they are the things that then pull you. So there's two sides to addiction. What pushes you, that is the pain that pushes you. And in resolving that, you then have to resolve the other side, which is how the behavior or the drug pulls you. And how do I live without that? Because you can resolve just the trauma, but that doesn't stop a person from being addicted. You have to address the actual addiction itself. So there's always two sides to it. And so the work with Matt was about addressing both sides, both the trauma, and of course there was trauma within the addiction itself. There was the trauma led him to smoke dope in the first place, and then the fact that he was using introduced him into a world of more and more trauma. So the actual
a
using
horrendous
caused
world,
more
a
trauma.
dark underworld of violence and pain.
So that needed to be addressed as well. And then when we got to the end of that, and it would have been a good 6 months' work before we started working on the actual addiction itself, because the problem with working on addiction itself too early is that you re-trigger someone and they walk out the door and start using. So I've worked with enough people now to
talk about that. Can we just talk about that for a moment, Keith? Because that's hugely important.
Sure.
And can I just say your words again, that if you start working with somebody on addiction too early, you'll re-trigger them and they're gone. Is that correct?
If you're working specifically on the addiction as opposed to the trauma that drives it.
Matt, would you like to say something more?
So again, there's two sides.
Yeah. So Keith, continue there, Keith.
So there's two sides. There's the trauma. So anyone that I've ever worked with addiction has always had trauma, and I ask every client the same question who comes to me of their own volition or is recommended to me. I say, have you had trauma in your life, and do you think that it drove your addiction? And I have never had anyone say that that's not the case. So, but that doesn't mean that everyone with trauma becomes an addict, but every addict that I've ever worked with has had trauma. Yeah. So that's one half of the equation of addiction. Then the other half of the equation then is the addiction itself. And of course, it's like you don't take an alcoholic into a bar and say, "Hey, it's all yours. You do what you like," because you're going to trigger their alcoholism and they're just going to get drunk, you know.
Yeah.
So in the same way, when you're working with a client with addiction, you can't introduce them to their addiction until you've resolved their trauma and until you feel that they emotionally they're in a stable place to be able to handle that.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith.
To actually look at it.
Like Matt, you say you can look at a spoon now and not be triggered.
Yeah.
Just a spoon.
Just a spoon. Yeah. So like
when you told me that was just so big. That really hit me.
Even seat belts in the car, because I'd use them as a tourniquet. Everything would trigger, you know? And it wouldn't just be the trauma.
Everything was an anchor into drugs.
Everything.
The seat belt because the tourniquet, the spoon.
Yeah. Everything.
Everything.
Water was.
Water.
Spoon to mull up. You know, everything was a trigger.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, and like Keith said, you know, there's the aversion and the craving. You know, so there's the two sides of addiction, of craving and aversion, and you know, so there's the aversion to
hate.
Yeah. So you know, every time I'd see Keith, what would happen is we'd process a chunk of unprocessed pain. You know, and like I got to a point where he took me through TRTP after many months of continuously seeing him, because I was so shut down. Like I said, I just wasn't in a place where I could have sat and imagined something for 40 minutes.
No. And can I just put pause on there for a second and say to people who are here, who are practitioners, you can't really get to you have to get a client who's in addiction recovery to a certain space where they're not in absolute pain. You have to somehow reduce the pain till they're in a stable place. And then you can do TRTP.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, it's intuitive. The way I work with people now is I have one, as soon as they start talking to me on the phone, I can tell whether they're ready or not.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah, well, look, like if someone calls me and they're still drinking or using, I'll tell them to go to rehab. You know, so I only work with people who are in recovery, and I prefer them to be stable in recovery.
Okay, so they're not drinking, they're not using.
Yeah, because if we're still drinking and using, then it's just a big red flag that the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not going to work. It's just going to
waste your time. The amount of times, like I went to a therapist when I was still using, telling them I'm not using, you know, and then I'd go and use straight afterwards just to make mum happy or whatnot, or to look like sport or something like that, you know. So I understand how it plays out, how these things play out, and I can hear it in someone's tone of voice if someone's, you know, telling me and whatnot, and I could hear if someone's very sincere, and it's that desperation. You know, that desperation.
Okay. So you said to me a while back that you'll work with somebody once they want to be clean as much as they want the drug.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
That's a desperate place.
It is. Yeah, and it's that place of desperation, that surrender, you know, that comes about. We can't make that happen. So if anyone has family members, you said someone did, you know, we can't make that happen. We can't make an addict get clean. So the more my mum and dad tried to help me, you know, the worse they made it, because what it told me was, you don't love me the way I am. And one of my core things was I'm not lovable. Just added to that unlovability. Another core belief was there's something wrong with me. Added to that, you know, because everything I'm doing is wrong, so there must be something wrong with me.
Right.
You know?
Okay. And so the more your mum and dad tried to help, the more it was, I'm not okay, you don't love me. That's really interesting. And what we'll do now is open the chat to questions. Please write in any questions that you may have. And Jane Dunn, you've got a big one, and I'll ask Matt that one. So this is question time, and you can see Matt's clean.
Yeah.
3 years. Over 3 years.
Over 3 years, yeah.
Over 3 years, Matt's been clean. He's now in a gorgeous relationship with Tara, and you've got your dear little boy who's just turned 1.
Yeah.
And Matt is a part of our very kind and generous and extraordinary TRTP practitioner community group. Because once people go through the TRTP training, we don't just say, off you go. There is a warm and generous, extraordinary TRTP practitioners community where we support each other at the back end of that. So there's always assistance there. So Fleur is saying, what can families do to support an addict? And I'm just going to go back to Jane's question to me earlier today, which was, Jane came to me apart from the webinar. I've invited her to be on this webinar, where her son is using, Jane, he's using acid. It doesn't really matter what he's using, but there are so many families in Jane's position not knowing what to do to assist. Matt, what can a parent do?
So we'll just...
so he's using everything. Jane Dunn says he's using everything. What can she do?
So I'll explain something that this is what I explain to parents, and this is the last thing parents want to hear. You know, it usually goes in one ear and out the other. So listen carefully and see.
Listen carefully, people. This is really, really important if you're a parent or a family member of an addict.
Yeah. So when I was using, my mum would come and pick me up at, say, 3 a.m. in the morning when I was off my head at the flats or something. She would come and pick me up. She'd be laying there all night with that videotape loop of fear that something's going to happen to me. I might die. He might go back to jail, this and that, rah, 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 all those thoughts. Okay, then she would, against her better judgment, knowing that it was enabling, knowing that it was unhelpful, knowing that I was just manipulating her, knowing that it would just, the same thing would happen again the next night, knowing that it was a destructive behavior. It was actually enabling my addiction, making it worse. She would get up, go and pick me up. As soon as I was in the car, she felt safe. That's addiction. My mum was playing out the same thing. She was doing an unhelpful, destructive behavior because she wasn't able to sit with that feeling of fear. She wasn't able to sit with her trauma, with her videotape loop playing over and over again. And that's addiction. So families are playing out the addiction just as much as the someone using the substance. The only difference is it's a behavior and one's a substance.
Can I just kick in there with the work of Candace Pert and talking about emotion as addiction? So what happens is when we experience an emotion, we think a thought, we have an experience, we have an emotion. So the hypothalamus releases neuropeptides, which are proteins, and there's different proteins for different emotions. And they go through the circulation of the body, and our cells have receptors on them. Our cells have receptors for oxygen and water and nutrients and opiates and emotions, drama, pain, fear, jealousy. And in the same way as we get a hit from the opiate and the cells divide then and have more receptors for the opiate, our cells divide and have more receptors for the fear, the drama, whatever it is. So it's actually a physiological addiction to an emotion, just putting that in there.
Yeah. So like we say a parent's in bed and they have that compulsion to go do this enabling behavior, whatever it may be. I'm using that as an example. That compulsion is the same thing that drives an addict, to go and use. So then I get in the car, my mum's system goes back to calm. The same as when as soon as I get heroin in my pocket, I didn't even
you get
use it, I put it in my pocket
calm.
And calm. It's the same thing. It's that same wheel that we play out. So it's important for parents to work on themselves, because the addict, you can't force ripen fruit. He will get clean when he's ready. If he does, you cannot force ripen fruit.
So Jane, you cannot force ripen fruit. You cannot force ripen fruit. People will get clean when they're ready. And I'm just going to, because we're running out of time, Matt, Kaz Coleman says, I don't agree with you. Fair enough, Kaz. Addiction hides trauma. And if you tell them everything will be fine when you stop using, that person will be in hell if they have trauma. If no one gets that, you will die without support. Alcohol supported me. It was wrong. Kaz, we're not saying, I don't know what you're hearing, but we're not saying that you tell an addict everything will be fine when you stop using. That is absolutely the antithesis of what this entire webinar is about. And perhaps if you re-listen to it, you'll hear it. Kaz, we're talking about people can't just give up an addiction because the pain is still there. We're talking about resolving the pain. We're talking about resolving the pain. There is always trauma behind addiction. And we need to get people to a stable place. And then what we do with TRTP is we resolve all the trauma. So just because we're running out of time, I'll just give you a synopsis of TRTP and how we resolve that trauma. So as Matt was saying before, the distress of life builds up and up and up. What happens is we have a distressing event, like little Matt would say, Dad would be hanging from his fingernails from the ceiling, being totally startled, and little Matt go, okay, we have a distressing event. Little Matt goes to school and gets thoroughly bullied. He releases distress hormones, cortisone, adrenaline, etc. The emergency services goes off in his brain, the amygdala. I'm in danger. No. Adrenaline surges through his little system. The brain gets overwhelmed. What happens when that happens is the reptilian part of the brain lights up, and we use that. The frontal lobe shuts down. Included in that, the hippocampus shuts down. And what happens is we lose the ability to self-regulate. So the hippocampus doesn't take the event once it's over and go, well, that's over, and put it in long-term memory and shut the door. Instead, what happens is it's stored in the unconscious like a videotape loop. Like there was that bullying event when I was just so terrified. It was just so horrible. And that bullying event, and that thing with Dad, and that thing, and that thing. So what happens is the distress, all these videotape loops of distressing events that were never put away and the door closed, they were stored in the unconscious as events that are happening now. That's happening now. That's happening now. I'm being bullied now. The unconscious runs every chemical reaction, every electrical response in the body. And so the body is responding as if that event and that event and that event are happening now. Consciously, we're not aware of it. We're just aware of the pain and the distress. And we have to reduce this distress. We have to run away from it. We have to get rid of it. We have to push it down. What happens with TRTP is we simply turn off those videotape loops. So when an addict is a place of stability, we can then do the work of TRTP and go back and turn off those videotape loops. There's not re-traumatizing, there's none of that. So the whole being returns to calm, and that self-regulation kicks in. Because for most people, they have a distressing event, they release stress hormones, the event passes, they don't have to think about it. They just naturally come back to calm. They don't have to meditate for 3 days, it just happens. But when we're stuck up here in trauma, that doesn't happen. That regulation never happens. We never come down from the distress. It just keeps going. And what TRTP does is it turns off the videotape loops and resets the brain. It's like doing a factory reboot on a phone. Then the being is able to, if there's a distressing event, naturally self-regulate. Don't have to think about it. It comes down. And so that's what TRTP does. And the problem is with rehab, etc. How many times, like Matt went to 17 times, went to rehab, but your trauma wasn't addressed. Is that correct?
Not like in an effective way anyway. It was maybe brought up in conversations and whatnot, but no.
It wasn't actually addressed. Okay, Yvonne's got a question here. It's not true. Is it not true that once you've given away an addiction, you replace it with another addiction of some sort? Yes, Yvonne, unless you deal with the reason. Addiction is simply a symptom of trauma. Deal with the trauma. Turn off those videotape loops. Return the person to a place of calm and self-regulation, and there is no longer pain. Take away the pain.
I'll use a quick example. So like in 12-step meetings, because I did 12-step for a while, you see people 10 years clean who are totally addicted to sex, totally addicted to the gym, totally addicted to food, because they're 10 years clean from the drugs, but they still have those drivers. There's still so much unconscious shame, unconscious pain, all just sitting there. And it's still presenting as destructive behaviors. And just quickly back to the parents thing. So what I'd say to parents is lovingly accept your child's using because they're in pain. It's their way of coping. Or lovingly distance yourself and work on your own trauma. Work on your own drivers, because that's what enables and keep. It's like throwing petrol on a fire. A lot of the things parents do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So parents, just keep loving your kids, lovingly distance yourself or not, and deal with your own shit, basically. I think that's the technical term.
Yeah.
With your own pain. Fleur's saying resolving trauma equals moving from maladaptive to adaptive behaviours. Fleur, it's so much more than that. I'm really sorry. Resolving trauma simply means taking away the frickin' pain. Turning off those videotape loops. It's not learning new adaptive behaviours. No. That's why cognitive behavioural therapy doesn't work. It's not cognitive. It's stored in the unconscious. All this pain is stored in the unconscious in the body. It doesn't make sense. If it's stored in the unconscious in the body, why would you deal with it cognitively in trying to cognitively change behaviours? It's just not logical. Deal with it where it is, the pain in the body, those videotape loops that are running in the unconscious, that's running the body. Turn them off. Take away the pain of the past. And then there's no triggers and there's no need to use. There's no need for the addiction. Doesn't that make sense? Nuria says, is it true that TRTP can resolve trauma in 3 sessions? Yes, but the person has to be ready. In addiction, it's such a complex thing. You have to get the client to the place of being really ready, as Matt said, desperate to be well as much as desperate for the substance.
So look at it like this. If there's, the payoff of using is still really big, then then there's nothing we can really do, So for years and years and years, the payoff of me using heroin was massive, absolutely massive. But then eventually everything stopped working. And then there was no payoff in me keeping my addiction anymore. It was either death when the drugs weren't working anyway, or I get well, and I had to hit that point. So there was no payoff for using anymore. And that's what we have to really look at.
Yeah.
What are they getting out of it? And are they still getting that relief out of the drug?
Yeah.
And it's easy to tell.
It's easy to tell. And Connie says, what can a parent do if their son demands money for drugs and feels threatened if they don't enable the addiction?
What was that? Sorry.
What can a parent do if their son demands money for drugs and feels threatened if they don't give the money?
Yeah, I can relate to that because, like the amount of times I threatened my parents, and like every addict does, or a lot do. It's something I hear so often, and parents got to do what they got to do. The last thing they want to do is call the police, get their kids in trouble and have the really strong boundaries. But if you feel threatened, call the police.
If you feel threatened, call the police. What about giving money for the drugs?
No, that's enabling.
That's enabling. So just don't do it. Just don't do it. All right. So just before we finish, thank you for being here. You can find Keith and Matt's details on the TRTP website, which is www.therichards.traumaprocess.com. Go to the practitioner directory and you can find Matt's details. Matt works online. Keith's in Melbourne. Matt and Keith are within our TRTP practitioner community. They are our addictions experts. Thank God we have them. That's all I can say. If you've raised your hand, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. You can type in if you need to. But some people before the webinar have asked about the training, so I'm just going to go on about that.
There are some questions there, Judith, about whether Matt and I work with people. We only work with them when they're clean.
Yes, only
They
when
need to
they're
be in if they're using, they need to be in a rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and really the work that Matt and I are doing are really about when people become clean is keeping them that way. And that's really
Yes,
what it's
it's
about.
not getting them off the drugs, okay? It's not getting them off the drugs. Send the person to rehab. Once they're off the drugs, once they're clean, send them to Matt or Keith.
Someone asked, isn't it hard to get clean, to be ready without turning off the tapes? Yes, it's very, very hard, but it can be done. You know, I know people who are clean 10 years who still haven't turned off the tapes. They're in a lot of pain, but
They're still going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the TRTP process, which turns off those videotape loops, we are in deep, I'm going to swear, we are in deep shit, people. The mental health system is hemorrhaging. It doesn't have the answers anyway. We need something that actually is effective. And so TRTP is that. If you are compelled, if you are a therapist who is compelled to have something that will turn off those videotape loops, that will take the pain away from the past of your client so that their system goes from fight, flight, freeze and, I'm not safe, and trying to dull down that pain in whatever way to a place of it's over and I'm safe now. If you're compelled to have a solution for the clients who sit in front of you, go to the website, therichestraumaprocess.com, and make a 20-minute appointment for a conversation to see if we're a match. TRTP training is not for everybody, and we don't accept everyone who applies to enroll. But let's see if we're a match. You can find out about the TRTP training on the website, therichestraumaprocess.com, but we have to do something different. There are so many people dying from overdoses, from suicide. If you're a practitioner, a therapist, a mental health or a health practitioner, you owe it to yourself and to the world to investigate this. We have to do something different because what we're doing is obviously not working. I mean, Matt was in rehab 17 times and nobody actually dealt with why he was there in the first place. Hello? 17 times? It's just not good enough, is it? TRTP is not just some little process. TRTP is a revolution. We will change how mental health is done across the planet. We have our own research teams in place who are busy proving the process at the moment. If this compels you, go to the website, richardstraumaprocess.com, look at the training. You can click on a link to make an appointment and let's have a conversation. Anyone who wants to speak to me, somebody there was saying, can they call me? Can they talk to me? You can contact me through the contact page on the website, therichestraumaprocess.com, and that will get to me. Thank you, Keith, for the work you do. Thank you for joining us here. Goodness knows how many lives have been saved by your work, Keith, and by your work, Matt. And I just take my hat off to you, Matt. What a freaking story. What a man you are. I just have so much respect for you, Matt, and for you, Keith. Thank you so much for joining us on this TRTP journey. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for our attendees. Thank you for investing your... Yeah, it's great to have you here, Keith and Matt, and we'll do this again. Hey, we'll go maybe into more depth about it. Thank you to the attendees. Thank you for joining us, for investing your time and your energy. And let's not just accept that this is the way the world is. Let's frickin' change it by taking...
Sorry, I was just going to say, if anyone wants to know more about trauma and addiction, have a look at the work of Gabor Mate. It's Gabormate.
Acute. Gabor Mate. He talks all about it. And you can contact Matt and Keith through the website, which is traumaprocess.com. Go to the practitioners directory. And if you're a parent, bless you. And do not enable your child. It's tough, but work on your own pain and just love your child.
And then you're setting a good example. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. It's tough. I know it's tough. My heart bleeds for you. But on that note, thank you. Thanks so much, Matt. Thanks so much, Keith, for just
Thank you, Judith.
being here and engaging in this conversation. It's such an important conversation. Thanks to all attendees.
Thanks, Judith.
Come and join us and help us to change the world and take away this terrible pain. TheRichardsTraumaProcess.com. Make an appointment. Come and talk. Thank you.